Good afternoon, guys. I want to say thanks, first of all, for coming in. I know you got a big game tomorrow night against one of your rivals, and I'm going to make sure this is going to be a brief topic that we discuss. It's going to take probably 15-20 minutes or so. I'm going to go over the topic. We're going to interact with each other. We're going to go over some stuff, and I'll get you back out there so you can get ready for the game. For those of you who don't remember, just as a brief reintroduction, my name is Adam Omashinsky. I am a master's student at John F. Kennedy University, and what I study is performance enhancement. Now, I've really enjoyed our individual sessions and getting to know you guys as individuals, both on and off the court. What really makes you go? What you enjoy? What you love about basketball, and what you love to do in your everyday life, whether it be school, work, or with your friends, and what it really makes you tick as individuals. And then observing you guys in practice as well has been great, because you are the #1 team in the state, and it's cool to see those group dynamics at work and see how hard you guys work and what you specifically do to achieve such a status as #1 team in the state. Now, and like I said, I really appreciate you guys coming in here. You guys have been very receptive. You've been welcoming to me, both in practice as well as when we met individually. So that means a lot to me, because it makes my job that much easier. It gives me more information to work with, to make the best out of this situation. Now, I was lucky enough 2 nights ago to go to one of your division games, and I wasn't sure what I was going to be going into. It's the #1 team in the state. I made some assumptions. I figured it was going to be a packed house, regardless of the competition. I figured you guys could have a nice, loud cheering squad, and I figured it'd be a great environment to perform in, and I think it was. It was basically standing room only. It was a packed house. The audience was into it, whether your friends, colleagues, parents, whomever. You guys had a huge cheering section, and they were super pumped up as soon as I walked in there for your guys' warm-ups. And it was very nice to see, seeing how you guys were playing one of the lower level teams in your division. Now, what I noticed, because I've seen you guys in practice, I've seen you go over your warm-up many times. It's just part of your practice routine. You're going to go out and do it today. And when I see you in practice, it's very crisp. You guys are going through the stuff. Coach is right on top of you. He's telling you what exactly he wants, and he's always sending out reminders. Hey, come on, let's go. Crisp passes, hands ready, push off hard, one dribble, score it, get down in your stance. All these little reminders of making sure you guys are locked in and ready to go. But when I looked down and observed you during the game, it didn't seem to match what I saw in practice, which I definitely thought was interesting. But I gave you guys the benefit of the doubt. You guys are the #1 team in the state, and I hadn't seen you guys prepare for a game before, so I figured you guys perhaps prepare differently than you do in practice, and that's certainly understandable. They're 2 different environments, and you don't want to have the same thing. Sometimes you don't want to have the same energy level, and you don't want to perform the same way before a game as opposed to in practice. But once the game started, I expected to see that #1 team in the state, and the team I've watched for the past 2 weeks, that great team that really lays it on and shows me how great you guys are at basketball. Now, what happened in that first half as opposed to what I've been seeing the past 2 weeks in practice? Exactly. Yep. Turnovers. Not down in our stance. Missing shots. Complaining to teammates. That's all stuff I never see in practice. But it was all occurring in that first half. And what was the result going into the first half, into the locker room, when you guys went down at halftime to hear talk to coach? 3-point lead. Yep. Against a team that only has 2 division wins as compared to year 8, which is, if you've won all the games, you're #1 team in the state, and this team isn't even close to your level. And I was lucky enough to sit right behind their coach's bench, so he was all jazzed up going to the locker room. He was like, wow, we're right in this game. This is cool. I definitely didn't expect this coming in. And their players were pumped up. They were energized, and I could see you guys kind of just chin down the chest as you were walking in the locker room, which was disappointing, because I've seen you guys do your best, and I know that wasn't your best. Now, what happened in those first 4 minutes of the third quarter? Exactly. You guys went from a 3-point lead to a 20-point lead, just like that. And it was a team I've been seeing for multiple weeks, and the team everybody probably expected to see as they came in for this game. Now, could anybody tell me right now what they were thinking about before the game, whether it be in warm-ups, sitting watching the junior varsity, or during the first half as you were going through your struggles. Tired, weren't motivated, thought you were gonna run them over. Okay. Now, how would you compare those feelings? Now, what was it like after you came out of halftime, after you talked with coach, and he laid out what he wanted for the second half? What type of emotions? What were you thinking about then, and during that third quarter when he went on that great run? Mm-hmm. All right, super focused, upset at myself. All right, these are understandable feelings and emotions, and that's what Coach brought me in here today to talk to you about. We want to get you to where you are able to recognize these emotions and pick them up, and get to where you were in the third quarter, so you can perform your best. And that's what I'm gonna hear. That's what I'm gonna be talking about for the rest of this. Excuse me, for the rest of this session, and that is energizing techniques. Now, when I say energizing techniques, what does that mean to you? What pops in your head? Anything that pops in your head. Just raise your hand. I'll call upon you. Johnny. A boxer bouncing back and forth. Yeah. Something like Mike Tyson before he goes into a match. You've seen them. They're just bouncing back and forth. All right. I get that one. Go ahead, Brady. Smacking your hands together. Let's go. Okay. Yep. These are both good examples. And the reason why we would want to energize ourselves is very important here. And that's what I'm going to go through. I'm going to go through the why, the what, no, not the what, the why, the how, the when, and where you would incorporate these energizing techniques before we delve into what I want to go over today, a specific technique that you can use both in basketball and in your everyday lives. Now, the reason why we would want to pick up our energy is because we're a little too low. We want to get to our optimal level of performance, whether that be here or down here. Let's say, for instance, I know when talking to Carlos likes to be super energized and pumped up before he steps on the court. He likes to feel super intense. He likes to have his veins popping almost. That's him. He feels like he performs his best when he's like that. Whereas Johnny, as you probably noticed both in practice and in games, he kind of likes to separate himself before games. He likes to focus on himself, relax. You'll see him with his headphones on. I don't know what he's supposed to do. It's probably more tranquil type music or just low beat stuff, just to get him more in a relaxed state, and he performs best that way. Now the key is for the why is to understand I got a little too low if I'm Johnny. I need to pick things up. Or perhaps Carlos maybe need to drop it a little bit, or he needs to even pick it up even more because he's not at that super pumped up stage where his veins are popping out and he's getting able to focus and perform at his best. So we need to be able to recognize the symptoms there and get ourselves pumped up. In that recognition, what type of situations do you see yourself in? We've actually gone over some before when we were talking about the game the other night. When would you want to use, what situations would come up where you would want to use these activation techniques to pick up yourself, to bring up your energy? Bored, yep. Physically tired, yes. Yeah, that's something people don't really mention. Lacking motivation. All great examples, guys. How about this one? Poor competition. Like we saw the other night. Team not on the same level as you. You know you're going to run them over. You're going to blast them, as you said, Gary. These are all situations in which you might find yourself needing to energize yourself. Now, how we do that, it can range from different things. When I say how, and you think of activation techniques, like you said, bouncing back and forth or shouting certain words and stuff, what do you typically hear? You hear stuff like, pick it up, this is important, let's go, get yourself ready, come on, suck yourselves up, stuff like that. Yeah, that's typically what you hear. Now the last part, when would you want to use these type of techniques to pick yourself up and energize yourself? It's a very simple answer. I don't see any hands raised. Everybody seems to be just pondering and just looking at each other. Okay, yeah. Well, nobody wants to volunteer? Okay, fine. It's whenever it is necessary. So it could be on the bus ride over to the game, before entering a boring math class, something like that. It could be any situation, right before tip-off. It could be even during the game. Whenever you feel like you need to pick up your energy, it's important that you take note of these techniques and you can incorporate them. Now, I want you to go ahead and grab the sheets that are in front of you. I'll be starting going through the energizing verbal cues. This is the technique we're going to go over today. Now, energizing verbal cues are, like we've been talking about, an activation technique used to boost our energy, and this is via phrases or words that energize you. Now, what I like best about the energizing verbal cues is they're very efficient. Like I said, they're words or phrases. These can be very brief and can serve a great purpose in picking you up and get the results that we desire. Now, some examples of this are things like power, go, accelerate. Those are a few examples that I have written down on the sheet. Now, what I want you to do right now is think about cue words or phrases that may work for you, and just raise your hand, and I'll call upon you. Whatever first pops in your mind, raise your hand, and we'll talk about it. Just please share. Okay, Owen. Pump up. Pump up. Pump up's a great one. Explode. That works too, Cam. Yep. Gary, you look like you want to say something today. No, you do it. Don't give me the monotone voice of it. I think I know what you're talking about. I know where you're getting this from. It's from wrestling. Woo! Yeah, you can even picture Ric Flair doing the woo. Oh, I think we just stumbled upon something here. See, Gary thought of woo, and as soon as I did it, and we both did it out loud, nice and loud, I even did the little guns blazing, I saw a couple of you guys roll your eyes, and this is a tremendous point. When you're coming up with these phrases or words, it has to work for you. That woo that we just did may work for Gary or work for me, but it may not work for you, Johnny. It may not work for you, Cam, and that's okay. What's important is we find something that works specifically for you that gives you the result of picking your energy up. That's all we're looking for here. Now, as we discussed before, situations in which you're going to feel like you're going to need to pick up your energy. Bored, tired, things become repetitive. I'm actually physically tired and fatigued. All situations that occur. Now, what I want you to think about right now is when, specifically in basketball, may you experience these type of things? It can be both during competition, before, or afterwards. I don't care what it is. But basketball specific, and as soon as something comes in your head, go ahead, raise your hand, and let me know, and I'll call upon you. Brady, before tip-off, yep. Gary, yep. Out of a timeout, that's certainly a situation where you're going from sitting, rehydrating yourself. You would want to certainly pick yourself up. It's natural to be kind of in a lull after that. Awesome, Cam. I'm glad you brought that one up because it pertains to your group particularly. Like the other night when we separated and we got to a 20-point lead, it's hard to keep that same energy level that you had when it was only a single-digit game. So during blowouts in the fourth quarter is what he said, in case you guys didn't hear him. And this could go either way. I mean, you might find yourself later on in a situation where you guys are losing by 15 or 20 points or something like that in the fourth quarter, and you recognize, geez, the game's already over, it's in hand. Oh, I might as well just go through the motions here. What am I getting out of it? You need to be able to recognize that you're getting too low and you're not performing the way you want to, and you're not focused on the task at hand, which is winning basketball or performing well. Not even winning, just performing well up to your best capabilities. You need to be able to recognize that and bring yourself back up. So just to cover the why again, we want to do this because each one of us has an optimal energy level state, and we want to be able to recognize that we're too low, and we want to be able to pick ourselves up. How we're going to do that is with perhaps energizing verbal cues like what I talked about before, or there are other techniques as well which we can discuss if you'd like to come to me during practice or after practice, and we can talk about it. When you would want to do it, things become boring, repetitive, poor competition, which you guys will certainly run into in the future because there's still a regular season to be played before you guys get deep in the state championship and the playoffs. And whenever it is necessary. So whenever you're feeling low. And the biggest takeaway I want you to take away for the energizing verbal cues is it has to be important to you. So when you go home and you reflect on this and you look at this sheet and you start coming up with ideas, phrases, words that work for you in particular, I want you to start incorporating it into practice, then eventually into games or in your everyday life. And I want you to take note of the feelings and sensations that occur in your body, what you're thinking about, all these things. And I want you to be able to make sure you're constantly monitoring that once you figure out which cue works best for you. Because as we see, like with drills or warm-ups, once you start doing the same thing over and over again, sometimes it can become repetitive. And what's repetitive? Yeah, it was a symptom of end up situations where we're in a lull, we're not energized enough. So your cue word can work just the same. So once you start using it a bunch, maybe you need to be able to recognize when it starts losing its effectiveness and be able to, what do you think you should do from there? Switch it up. Exactly, Owen. Come up with something new, something fresh that gets you re-energized and get you back to those feelings and sensations that originally gave you when you first came up with that first cue word or phrase. So I want you to go home, take this stuff, think about it, and begin incorporating it into your everyday life. And I hope you got a lot out of this, and I hope that you're able to activate yourselves and be able to recognize, and now you have a technique to use both during games and practice as well as your everyday life, which is what I'm looking to do and just improve you guys as human beings. So once again, I'm done talking now, and go ahead, go to practice, enjoy that, and best of luck in the game tomorrow night. Thanks, guys.